Today feels like a fever dream.
I I I don't know. See, the thing that sucks is I don't know how to feel, and the only person that knows how I should feel is Nicole at the end of 2025.
Recording from New York and Los Angeles, your hosts, Nicole Katz and Briana Klein, are lined up on the grid for this week's Grid Walk. Engines are fired up, ready to broadcast to you every Thursday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and more. Subscribe, like the video, turn on auto downloads, and leave a review to provide us with a fresh set of tires. It's lights out and away we go on this week's Grid Walk.
Yeah. Yeah, I will insert now us recording our Andretti add-on last night and me scrolling through my Twitter feed to pull an Andretti quote and stumbling upon the first report of this and us both going, nah.
Listening, I probably sound a little bit different because we are recording this Wednesday evening because Andretti and F1 news has occurred, and it couldn't happen the day before and then F1 and Liberty Media were like, all right, time to shut them up. But I can't believe this just didn't happen 20.
Hold on. Time out for a second.
Is there more news? What else now?
Why is my entire feed talking about Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari?
I don't want to. What?
Okay. No, I mean, like, we're not including this in the episode. I'm sorry. I opened my Twitter to pull the quote, and, like, the first, 6 posts were, Lewis to Ferrari.
Nah, it's just the Italian media being the Italian media, and you're, throwing it in. Yeah, we have the whole thing of you Googling this, and we're like, no, that's probably not happening. And then we continued to talk about Andretti. And then I woke up this morning and the first thing that I saw was that Mercedes was having a meeting to announce that Lewis was leaving and Briana was still asleep because we are on different sides of the country. And I felt like my world was melting while Briana was still asleep.
I woke up to so many text messages and notifications from you. And I think the first one I saw was one of the ones where you were just screaming with no context at all.
Yeah, which could be anything.
So I went to bed thinking this was laughable, a joke, something must be just another one of those Ferrari off-season things. How many times over the years have we heard rumors of Lewis to Ferrari or insert driver name to Ferrari that you wouldn't expect, and they really don't pan out?
I mean, we had this conversation about Lewis less than 4 months ago.
Right. Right before his Mercedes contract was announced, only 5 months ago, Nicole.
I'm real-time processing this still. So us recording this is also still making it very real. And I just still can't get the image of Lewis in a Ferrari race suit out of my brain as not a fan edit anymore.
Right. The photo they posted of the 2025 lineup with Charles and Lewis, I genuinely, my immediate reaction was, that must be a fan edit. No, that's actually the timeline we are now on is one where Taylor Swift is going to the Super Bowl and Lewis Hamilton is going to drive for Ferrari. There's a lot.
This is April Fools in February. This is still something I totally did not believe that was going to happen. I thought that Lewis was going to be full career at Mercedes, end his career at Mercedes, do then an administrative role in Mercedes, have equity in Mercedes. It's Mercedes or die. It's not going to be Ferrari, even though that would be a fun time to watch.
Over the course of this surprise bonus pod, we'll get into all the details and all the different angles to look at this. But where I've landed on after going through multiple stages of grief and depression and acceptance, and I've been through every stage about 3 times today, is I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan, and if Lewis Hamilton wants to go drive for Ferrari, then Forza Ferrari.
I'm currently in all red in a 44 hat with red lipstick on. I always wanted to be a Ferrari girl and didn't feel like I could. And now Lewis, oh my God, this is going to really mess up my driver rankings. Oh my God, Charles, I'm so sorry.
I know.
Oh no. I'm in such that belief of you can't be rooting for two drivers at the same team because it just doesn't make any sense. Wow, this is a realization that I also just had. Oh my god.
Okay, we gotta just like get into the specific topics because there's so much I want to talk to you about.
Please, yes. Oh my god. Okay. So,
I think we need to start at the confusing timeline of all this happening, where Lewis Hamilton's contract extension was announced. That doesn't mean it was signed, but it was announced, I believe, August 31st, if not like very much at the end of August. It was announced as a multi-year contract with Mercedes for 2 years. I don't even believe we actually even knew about the fact that he had an opt-out out after 1 year. We knew
no,
that this
but I think people make that assumption. I feel like,
yeah,
and kind of like what we were talking about in today's episode, is like as drivers, there's like the different opt-outs and things. And look,
right.
Lewis has so many cards, so I feel like yeah.
And it was like a really big emotional announcement from Mercedes, and Lewis was very much like, I'm a Mercedes driver. And I don't really, like, I'm kind of one to take Lewis at his word. So something from that moment to fast forward 5 months later on February 1st, we're getting an announcement. And apparently he told Toto yesterday on the 31st that he is now going to, after 1 year, go drive for Ferrari. Now, I believe that, of course, things happened before this 5-month period that, like, maybe set things up for an uneasy foundation, so we can talk about that too. But how did this go so badly in 5 months?
I like don't know. I like the where we were, and I'm sure people have listened, or if you're new, you can probably go back and find it. Our episode after the contract extensions were announced, and we're like, this is so great, this is fabulous, like we have time to see like Lewis at Silverstone and he's not going to retire, and this means that he has faith in Mercedes. And suddenly the faith is gone. There is no faith in that car. I mean, how many times did you see on your timeline today like the retweet of Lewis in the blurred out photo and being like, he sat in the, like he may have sat in the car once and was like, Fred, you gotta, hey bud, remember me?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think there's 2 avenues, and it's probably a combination of both. There's probably the belief in how competitive Mercedes can be, and then there's probably interpersonal dynamics in there as well. So like going down the avenue you started us on with the car performance, there's too many reports about out there right now that I can't keep like what is real and what is fake straight. So I'm not going to like talk about, if you're seeing on your timeline people say like, oh, it was because of this engineer or this thing or that, and I'm like, I don't know. Right now I'm in the this was announced today, I don't know stage. But I am sure that there's some element in there of Lewis feels like he's at the end of his career. And if he doesn't see that Mercedes is on the path to win races and win championships anytime soon, that car performance is a reasonable assumption.
Yeah. And I was reading back. I mean, the one set of quotes that I was the most nervous to read today were from Toto. And then after we got them, then a lot of the articles were referring back to, comments that he made, I think it was like March of last year, talking about how, he would respect Lewis's decision if the car isn't going to a place, and maybe that could be, I just like definitely not right now, but maybe in like a year or two. And like I never really took it as fact, but I just can't, it's very difficult for me to see any other reason. I mean, I guess like animosity and things like, but you don't see that. So anything that we can like logically see, like on track, like not taking the personal like speculation assumptions into it in relationships with the team, I just can't see Lewis making this move unless the car is not going to get him number 9,
right.
8, whatever, 9, I'm going to say.
Yeah. I think it's that if interpersonal relationships were bad, but the car was going to be fast, I don't think Lewis would care. He would make it work. Like if him and Toto were on the fritz, or if the team wasn't going down his ideal direction, or if they were favoring George too much, or like whatever the dispute was, or he felt like it was, I'm sure he could make it work for a car that's fast.
Yeah, because that's in the end, that's the priority. Like he's a winner. He's the GOAT. He wants to like win. That's,
He wants to win.
you know, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where he's gonna go. My brain is fritzing right now of it. Like it's Ferrari. I just like, oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about like, there's like a couple things like why Ferrari that are like, worth discussing here. Like one, we know Red Bull's not an option.
Yeah. I mean, although today I suddenly feel like anything is possible, but like, no, that's really not an option for so many of the obvious reasons.
Yeah, but I think let's lay out a couple obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. One, I don't think Max would want to be in the same car as Lewis. Even though Lewis has said, by the way, when we talked in the episode, again, that came out today, like the normal Thursday Gridwalk episode, we were like both like, yeah, Lando's not that guy. By the way, this is why. Because our driver is that guy. He's like, yeah, put me up against Charles Leclerc. I'll do it. Whatever.
I'll do it.
But yeah, so I don't think Max actually would want to go against Lewis. Practically, Lewis and Max want different things out of cars. So I don't actually think logistically for a team, it would be like putting, admittedly, a much faster Checo in the car. But for like preferences, him and Max are very different drivers. Within the like, we're all very fast and like we're dealing with like minuscule differences. And I mean, Christian Horner was a PR merchant of like another level. Like I don't believe there's any respect there for Lewis to actually go drive for Red Bull.
There's too many nasty, horrible things that have been said and done, and it's
he's leaving Mercedes, which leaves only one other dominant like team that could compete for a championship on the grid. And if you haven't heard this rant from me, blah 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 blah, I believe you have to be a works team in order to compete for a championship in modern F1, and Aston Martin is a while away from being the Honda works team, and Alpine doesn't count because they're a disaster, and Stake is going to become Audi, but that's still a couple years away. So if there's only 3 teams that could technically compete for a championship right now that have the ability and the infrastructure and the engine and all of that. He's leaving Mercedes. He can't go to Red Bull. So, of course, his only option is actually Ferrari. Why Ferrari? Like, you can talk about the relationship with Fred. You can talk about all this stuff. But, like, if Lewis was ever going to leave Mercedes, this was the option and the only option.
Right. And it makes sense for him to do it in 2025. So then you could at least get that 1 year of helping to develop whatever's going on in 2026. So if it's, like, setting him up for what we're being told, again, and everything is made up and the points don't matter, a.k.a. contracts in F1. that Lewis has signed a multi-year contract with Ferrari, which we're all just like, who knows
at least
what that
2
means? At least 2, because that's more than 1, and 1 can't be multi. Like,
right.
It was the only option, and it is. If he didn't make the move when he's going to, I think it would just make that hunt for that championship like so much more harder. It would be harder. It would take longer. It would just not be the most efficient way to become a world championship driver.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that it's going to work out, but if he clearly thinks Mercedes isn't setting itself up, and the 2026 regulation reset is going to be a reset, but I think it's supposed to still be in this ground effect era. So I completely understand if Lewis is like, we're going into year 3 and you all still don't get this regulations, I need to go somewhere else. He has a relationship with Fred. It weirdly does make sense, even though I spent the last 24 hours going, what is going on?
What is happening? And then you're trying to find like any sort of like little bit of like, oh yeah. It's also just really funny now, like listening to our episode today and being like, well, was the multi-year extension for Charles and Lando a really good move? I would love to know how they feel right now. Does Lando be like, yo, bro, now there's a seat? Or Charles is like, no, I still believe Charles is like, Ferrari only. I don't know any other teams that happen. But
I did hear a report from Charles's team today that, again, asterisks here that I didn't like triple validate. I'm not a journalist. I'm sorry if this is wrong. And in a day like today, there's been so much information. But I believe that Charles said he re-signed with Ferrari knowing that this was happening.
Yeah, I did see that as well. And I also saw that like Carlos has known for a couple of weeks and different things like that. So I just am going to believe that so I sleep better at night and whatever. But wow, 12 hours ago or 24 hours ago, we were like, haha, that's a funny, Italian media. You say the darndest things and ha ha ha. And now we're here. And wow. I wonder how George feels.
He's probably ecstatic.
I know. I was going to say,
I really do is be the number one driver, and
I feel like he has to be so hyped. But then at the same time, I would be like, "Huh, Lewis is jumping ship. I'm gonna ignore that. That's probably because he doesn't believe in the car, and think it's because I'm better and he's scared of me." Right. Is how I would try to cope with that, and not think about, "Oh no, I'm. This is now the car I will have to drive." Wow. I now just feel like any kind of like earth-shattering news that happens in my life is just going to be told via you to me from you seeing a tweet about it. I'm not going to find out when Reputation Taylor version drops from Taylor Swift. I'm going to find out because we're going to be on the phone and you're going to open Twitter and you're going to see it.
Well, what makes it even better is that when we're recording, you use your phone as a camera, so you can't be on Twitter. So in between segments, when I'm on my phone just like checking up on things, you're like, what's happening?
You gotta tell me about the world, because I'm like a Victorian child and can't communicate.
So the woman whose iPad is literally right in front of her.
Oh yeah, I actually do have. Okay, so this is a season 2 development. We didn't have this prior to this.
We're marketing nerds. And so some of the fun of this is like, do you think when Monster Energy left Mercedes at the end of last season that this was coming then? Because they weren't leaving Lewis, and Ferrari, I don't believe, has re-upped with Celsius. And
that's definitely what I think it is. And then that solidified in my brain when that, now looking back on it, when George was announced as a global ambassador for Tommy Hilfiger. And it wasn't like they were saying Lewis wasn't, but they were saying that like George is following in like Lewis's footsteps of becoming a global ambassador for Tommy Hilfiger, like probably because soon Lewis won't be able to.
Yeah, but at the time I just felt like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Like sign both Mercedes drivers. Like George has now been at the team for long enough that they're gonna sign him, and like, yeah, I have one big marketing question out of this. It is very publicly known that Ferrari drivers are not allowed to have their own merchandise. And if Plus 44 isn't allowed to continue, I will revolt.
If Plus 44 can't continue, if suddenly Lewis has to wear like really atrocious like Ferrari, oh my God, is Lewis going to look like a McDonald's employee? No,
once a year at Monza.
Oh my God, he's gonna look like a minion and a banana. I am convinced that Lewis, including his contracts, just like we were saying, that like, you know, as drivers get better and they get smarter and they have opt-outs and things like that, I need to, in order to let myself sleep at night, believe that one of his like clauses is I still get to wear my clothes. I still get to be the fashionista baby girl that I am and rock my paddock fits because that is who I am. If he's suddenly wearing a Ferrari polo every single weekend, I'm gonna show up and I riot. I don't know. I'll write a letter, start a campaign. We'll do something.
There's two directions my brain is taking this right now. One, do you remember last year when all of a sudden Charles started to like sort of kind of wear the merch line that he had to disband, but then he like started wearing it again, and we all took it as a sign of maybe Charles was leaving Ferrari. What if it's actually that Ferrari's opening things up again? Like that's a possibility. And not again, opening it up for the first time. Right. I also just think whether or not Charles Leclerc can do whatever he wants, Lewis Hamilton is the sport. Like the amount of times people today is like, no one's bigger than Ferrari. Guess who's bigger than Ferrari? Lewis Hamilton. Ferrari stock price shot up today before it was even announced. It shot up last night with like an unreported like rumor that was swirling just at this potential. If you just like, I don't believe that social media numbers are like one for one, but if you just look at how many followers Lewis Hamilton has versus how many followers the Ferrari account has, like Lewis is 3 of the entire Ferrari account. So like, is Ferrari a big deal? Yes. But Lewis Hamilton is F1. So I don't believe that Lewis, like, and I believe this about a couple things, because I've seen a lot of people talk about like how Ferrari is not a very diverse organization and they're not very forward thinking about items that Lewis very clearly cares deeply about. I don't believe that Lewis would sign on the dotted line and then put himself in handcuffs, even for a fast car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's going to be able to wear his fashion. He's going to, honestly, Ferrari's going to become like an incredibly diverse team in like a year. He's going to show up and he's going to be like, all right, here's what you need to change. Let's do it.
And hopefully everyone listens, because I feel like no one at Mercedes was listening, and that's how we ended up here.
It's like crazy. Like, this is all going to be really crazy 10 years from now. We're going to look back at this and we're going to see the end of Abu Dhabi and Toto Wolff goes out celebrating and then they don't fight for his championship. And then you have that whole awful, like,
everything
2022. But, like, even things last year that we all at the time were like, this is so weird. Like, why aren't they going to Lewis's podiums? And then they're like, well, we had to pack up. It's like, well, every other team did too. And, like, everything has been so tense. And it's like crazy that this is where we are. But I don't necessarily think any of those things I just mentioned like directly informed this decision or anything. It's just like I can already start to see the story we're going to tell 10 years from now form to this point.
Yeah. I have like this like haunting thing behind me that's like Ferrari strategy just coming in to ruin him, of like, all right, we're on plan ZZ. And, oh, we're going to put you on softs. Oh, and it's raining. Oh, no. Like, we didn't know that we should look at the weather. Like, I can't.
You know what?
But I'm trying to not focus on that.
Fred Vasseur has come in. He has recruited the best engineers from Red Bull and Mercedes. And then he was able to sign Lewis Hamilton away from Mercedes. Something we never thought would happen. Until I am proven otherwise, I'm going with In Fred We Trust.
I really wholeheartedly want to agree, but my tummy hurts. I'm so scared.
He fixed the pit stops in like a year, in like half a year.
He did. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was just, you know,
I don't want to sit.
We're never going to be able to. Mercedes is not going to be able to improve their pit stops no matter how fast this car is. I'm not sitting in the pits for 7 seconds.
I didn't mean to rush so fast past all the sponsored talk though. So was there anything else you wanted to talk about there?
No, I really just it was the I remember feeling like Monster, that's weird. Them leaving Mercedes is weird. And I was just like, but then we have the contract. So that's fine. And no, I thought the not hearing anything about Celsius and stuff at Ferrari was just that it was like, you know, they didn't do too much with it, and that's something we've discussed. But yeah, between Monster and Tommy Hilfiger, I'm shocked that we weren't. I mean, not shocked, because this is...
How could we see this coming, Nicole?
Never. Legitimately never. This has been a day of fan edits. That's something. Again, I saw one tweet that was talking about when the Sky Sports video, it's like, wow, the Sky Sports video is available for me in my country. That's how you know it's serious.
I tried to look into this today. Like, is this the biggest driver movement that's ever happened? And I didn't get like all the way back. But if you think about every time a driver was signed away, well, so first you have to think about what drivers could possibly be at Lewis's level at this time in his career. And the answer is Schumacher. Like, maybe a bigger announcement was when Schumacher came back and started to drive for Mercedes. Mm-hmm. But at that point, I think everyone kind of knew his career was over. But like I would love to hear from someone. Lap. Right. I would love to hear from someone like how they felt when that announcement was made. And like maybe that didn't feel like a victory lap and it felt bigger. My other comparables were Seb deciding to go to Ferrari after his 4 championships at Red Bull. But again, like that means like Seb is great and was great at that time, but he's not Lewis Hamilton after 8 world championships. Like, so it's just, it can't be the same. But I guess like similar. And then Fernando Alonso making the move to either McLaren or Ferrari at the various points. But again, 2-time world champion, not the same.
None of this. It's again, Lewis is a kind like one of his own, and we've experienced like a lot of crazy like sports announcements in our time of life, and nothing has rocked my world this much. Not even like Tom Brady going to the Bucks and like I don't
retiring, but not really retiring, and then
like nothing has like shocked me this much. I like arguably this is bigger than the whole Oscar tweet fiasco. Like,
for sure.
Of course
because it's
it is.
Lewis. Like, everything's bigger because it's Lewis.
Yeah. Again, it was on the elevator screen in my office, and I don't work in motorsports.
I loved when you texted me today that this is bigger than when the Jonas Brothers broke up.
I do have to say with the caveat of thank God the Jonas Brothers got back together, or else I think I would feel very differently about that. But I do feel a very similar type of devastation that I did in October of 2013. But slightly potential of hope because I think Lewis is smarter than the Jonas Brothers were in October of 2013. All of this stuff says I love you, baby, and like, wait, this is really cute. Oh my god, it's a milkshake with 2 straws. Oh, the socks showed out. That said, I love you. Those are cute. It's a candle?
Too bad it's going to be his worst selling launch ever.
What do you mean? This is going to be my merch for the day of Lewis Hamilton rocking my world. Love you bunches, and it's roses. Wow, this is such a shame that he dropped that this day because this is really some of his best work thus far. I can't believe it. I need oh my god, why are the crew necks so expensive?
They're always too expensive.
I only said the next Enchante like crew neck I'll buy is just FEA when it's restocked.
We love Lewis. But I think if you're listening to this and you're like, why did Ferrari go after Lewis? Here is why. He is fast. He is the sport. And there's probably some element of like experience and expertise that he is going to bring that like as great as Charles is, like he's not Lewis. Like there is only a Lewis. And of course they would want Lewis.
And also, I think another driving factor here, like the previous long-standing relationship with Fred, like solidifies like that trust and bond with all of those things included. It's like a potential for a really magical pairing.
Like, of course Ferrari wants Lewis. If you're sitting there like, why would Ferrari want Lewis? Like, stop and thinking about it for like 2 seconds. He's the greatest driver in the sport's history. Of course they want Lewis. And he hasn't shown any signs of taking a step back. Like, apparently Ferrari chairman John Elkman has been like trying to get Lewis to come drive for them for years. And I think to your point, Fred was probably what made it so they could actually convince Lewis. Like, I think that's the first person in a position of leadership where Lewis would consider leaving that Lewis is like, yeah, I'll go work with you.
He doesn't like Edna Mode. Oh,
I don't think they had a relationship.
Mattia, no. I call Edna for all of our new friends. I just refer to him explicitly as Edna Mode. No
capes.
No capes.
I believe when we were formulating, like thinking of the idea for this podcast, it was before Mattia was fired, and one of the first sounders we wanted to put in the show was a no cape sounder. And then before the show even started, he was fired. We were devastated that we couldn't use this irrelevant. Like, so I disproportionately root for someone to hire Mattia, not because I actually like personally care, but just because I want to be able to have a no cape sounder.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him hanging out with, like, Alpine. I don't know whatever ended up with that or anything, but we're not here to talk about either of those teams. Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's starting to make sense, or maybe not that it didn't make sense to begin. I don't know. My brain's really trying hard to like grasp the changing of my entire reality.
Right.
So I'm in the stage now of looking for all of the positive signs and why this is only a good thing, because it's Ferrari. And we love Ferrari. We like Ferrari. Sorry, Charles. I don't know. Oh my jeez.
I don't think it's necessarily a good or bad thing. I opened the podcast saying, if Lewis wants to go to Ferrari, then I will support Lewis at Ferrari. My bright spot in all of this, and I've already said this to you, but to everyone listening, hello, thank you for listening. We only thought that we had a Lewis Hamilton contract through 2025. Guess what? As of this morning, we have a Lewis Hamilton contract through at least 2026, which means I went from having guaranteed 2 years of Lewis Hamilton to a guaranteed 3 years of Lewis Hamilton. And I'm sure, wherever you want to drive, Lewis, you do you.
My money, like stash, saving up for Silverstone, feels a lot happier and more like this can actually happen because
Before
we've
he
gained
retires.
more time. Right. But now suddenly my brain is like, we're gonna have to add like an Italy race, I think.
Oh, for sure.
So we need to save more money.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. If anyone wants to sponsor the podcast, we'll make really great content.
Especially if it's about Lewis. We'll really sell that for you.
We're spiraling here. We really do have to talk about what this means for who's going to fill that Mercedes seat and the rest of the F1 silly season.
God, the rest of the F1 silly season. Go back to my wish list for the year of I want one.
Yeah, this is your fault. I completely forgot that I was going to lead the show with this. In our wish list, Nicole was like, I want a silly season. And if you remember my face, I was like, I don't know, what are you wishing for? You're wishing for something. And then I calmed down because I was like, Lewis is under contract. It's okay. But no, you put this out into the universe. And if anyone wants to blame anyone for this chaos, Nicole Katz is who I'm blaming.
And I will say the exact same thing that I said to you today is, this is all of my fault. I will take full responsibility if Lewis never wins another championship, but I will also take responsibility if he does win another championship because I manifested it. So no matter what happens, it's my fault. And I'm okay. That I can live with that because sometimes we wish for things and then we don't really understand the consequences of our own actions. And I don't think I'll fully understand that for another
at least 2 years. Right.
But longer, because 2 years from right now is the beginning of 2026. So I feel like I just need to give myself at least till the end. Oh my God, I'm going to be like in my 30s. This is bananas.
Celebrating Nicole's 30th birthday at a Lewis Hamilton driving for Ferrari race. If you're watching on YouTube, now on the screen, I have what we know about the 2025 F1 grid. And all we know is that Max Verstappen's going to be driving for the Red Bull. We know the full Ferrari lineup. We know the full McLaren lineup. We can presume that Stroll will still be driving for Aston Martin, and George Russell has a contract at Mercedes, and everything else is blank. So I just wanted to give that setup. If you're listening on audio and you want a visual guide to what we're going to be talking about, like, pop over to YouTube. All right, you have the floor again.
Well, I think I'm going to go with, like, off the top of my head. I feel like I have 3 very likely candidates for this seat.
For the Mercedes seat?
Yes.
Okay.
For my most likely picks, in order of least to most possible of where my brain's going, I'm just going to say Carlos because everyone else is saying it. And it's just like,
I really don't think that's possible.
Right, but
yeah.
I'm saying it just because of, like, to your point of, like, going to different teams, and until Audi's around, I don't know. But look, I've been shocked today in things that I never thought were going to happen, so I've seen weird things go down.
Mm-hmm.
Esteban?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I brought that one up.
And I am pulling for Alex Albon. I think he's the right option. I think he's the right choice, and I think he would be a great
I want to see
first
the blow
driver
up with George.
there.
It sounds entertaining.
Although,
that made me sound like such a bad person. I'm sorry. Like, maybe they'll be great. I don't know.
I'm going to say the disclaimer of that energy coming from you right now is also the realization that we've had to sit with today that most likely the next year that we're going to watch is like team orders being called for like George going to like over Lewis and George getting the preferred like upgrades and changes to his car. And that's like a very likely decision to be happening. And for like Mercedes, it makes sense like how everything's going right now. And as Lewis Hamilton fans, that's going to be really sucky and painful to watch. So that's kind of also where that's brewing.
Well, we've also been through 2 years of Mercedes
Of
like
the
super backing George in a way that we don't believe he deserved. So, yeah, I mean, I was really a George Russell fan until the 2022 season, and now I'm so anti-George Russell. And I do, like, of your 3 options, which I think pulling from the existing grid, I do think those are the 3 options that make the most sense. Throwing out that, like, yeah, of course they could buy someone out of a contract somewhere. Like they could buy Lando out. I just don't think Lando would do it. But
trying to play the easy cards of
right.
Who is on the grid currently that we know is like made it into F1. So because not trying to ignore anyone in like F2 or F3 or like other series.
Well, we
that
can circle back
F1.
to that in a second. Yeah. I think that Alex Albon really deserves another shot at a top team. And I don't think he would want to or ever go back to Red Bull. He's driving for Williams, and Williams and Mercedes have a close relationship. So theoretically, Mercedes could just ask for the data to like, see how Alex is doing. So I think that of drivers currently on the grid, that's the most likely. I know people keep connecting Carlos there, but the reality is I think Carlos is going to end up at stake. And then be an Audi works driver just because of the connection with his dad, who's an Audi driver, and like the connections there are really strong. I'll throw a flyer out there that I've seen a lot of mock-ups of fans being silly that it's Fernando Alonso might get that seat. And just for the chaos factor, like, okay. I would love to see Fernando Alonso and George Russell try to out-petty each other.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh my God, that would be very fun to watch.
Right. If I'm like playing this all out and nothing I say now is going to happen because again, Lewis Hamilton is a Ferrari driver, so nothing matters. Like I could see them pulling Alex Albon out of the Williams for 2025 and then putting Kimi, who is their junior driver that they just had skip F3 and is doing F2 this year. So if he dominates in F2, I could see them putting him in the Williams for 2025, putting Alex in the Mercedes for 2025, and then making a decision between Kimi, Alex, and George and taking 2 out of the 3 into the new regulations. Yeah. Because I think it's not a given that George is going to get an extension. Like everyone's like, George is Mr. Mercedes, but Lewis was kind of beating him pretty resoundingly, and now he has to step up and be a team leader. So Lewis Hamilton is a Ferrari driver, so I'm just not taking that as a guarantee.
Every time you say that sentence, I have like cognitive dissonance in my
head. It doesn't make sense. I had to make the graphic that you're all seeing on your screen in YouTube right now, and I had to put Hamilton next to a Ferrari logo. I was very confused. But I do think that this is going to make 2025 really interesting because there's now, technically speaking, 2 seats open on like a giant team. Like you have the other Red Bull seat, and then you have the open Mercedes seat in the final year of a regulation set, going into a regulation reset. Like, and then that isn't even counting the fact that you have 2 stake seats that in 2025, the drivers who are going to be driving for stake are going to then be the Audi drivers for 2026, which will be a works team. And then I don't think it's guaranteed that Fernando Alonso is going to stick with Aston Martin and Honda. So there's a lot of like really good seats open. And then whoever doesn't get all of those I just mentioned, there's still 2 open Alpine seats, which is still better than like, you know, the past greats or the sister teams. So I'm just, what do you think about Pierre? I've seen that thrown around as a driver on the grid right now who might end up at Mercedes.
I think Mercedes would right now say that he would cost too much money. And I don't mean in terms of contract. I mean that in terms of crashing and or penalties and or fines and or, yeah, I don't know.
I think if you're going to pick one of the current Alpine drivers, you're going to pick
wouldn't
because
be...
they've seen evenly matched. Like you'd pick the one you have a past relationship with, like 100%. Toto and Esteban.
Again, I'm thinking Esteban just seems like so much more of the better fit there. I also just can't see Pierre. I don't know. That's such a different vibe. The branding doesn't line up for me there. My bet for Alpine would be Esti Besti makes so much more sense. But I mean,
if they're going to pull one of those.
I didn't think today would ever happen.
Chances you think they make a play to try to sign Lando?
I think that's very possible. I think that's
chances you think it happens?
Not zero. I'm not at 50-50 right now. I kind of really... Yeah, keep going. What's the next one?
Yeah. Chances you think that McLaren gave Lando Norris a crap ton of money because they actually knew this was coming and they wanted to re-sign Lando as quickly as possible?
100%. 100. Someone had an in somewhere, someone knew something, and then was like, let's give Mr. Lando lots of money and make him feel very special, just in case. But,
okay, last chances. Chances we're going to know who fills this Mercedes seat before summer break.
No way. I don't think so. Do you think we'll know before summer break?
I asked the question because I honestly have zero idea. I just wanted to give you all the hard questions.
Yeah, that's always great and fun. Well, now my brain's also thinking that like we didn't get the contract update for George and Lewis until like end of August. Which is post summer break. So,
but clearly there was some part of that negotiation that wasn't going well because I refuse. This all goes back to I refuse to believe that everything just dramatically fell apart in 5 months. This is clearly something that Lewis, there must have been, I don't know. This week, we got an announcement that Lewis's agent changed for all his racing stuff too. Like, there's stuff going down. I need the tell-all sooner, and we're not going to get it until Lewis retires.
Yeah, the tell-all will be many, many years and very, very far away, and hopefully, if we're still doing this podcast in a million years, we'll give you the live reading of all of that and our favorite parts of it. But the same day, I think we'll get the Lewis Hamilton tell-all novel. The same time, we'll get the Taylor Swift tell-all novel. And then that's all I need.
I think we'll get Lewis's first.
Yeah,
I think Lewis will retire.
It'll hold me over.
And we'll get like a 6-episode Apple TV limited series about the life and times of Lewis Hamilton.
Hammer time. I rose. I'm giving you all the names now. Just like, still I rise. Or I retired, but I rose. I don't know.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Gridwalk. Thank you to our co-creators, Nicole Katz and Briana Klein. Thank you to our four-legged executive producers and me, voiceover man. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, turn on auto downloads, and leave a review to provide us with a fresh set of tires for the next week's show. You can follow us on social media at Gridwalk Show for daily content. We will be back to walk the Formula One grid every Thursday, and we will see you for the post-Gridwalk debrief in the comments.
Today felt like the meme, the SpongeBob meme, where everything's on fire and he's running around, not a grid walk.
Yeah, 100%. There was no grid walking, there was grid flames, there was grid panic, there was grid refresh. That's what today was.